everyone. Welcome to the Zone to Speak podcast. I'm your host, Juliana. This episode of Zone to Speak is supported by Peloton, the ultimate sunscreen for athletes. If you know me, you know I never leave the house without sunscreen, and Peloton is my go-to. It's lightweight, breathable, and designed for endurance sports, perfect for any day out on the saddle. And because they are supporting the podcast, you get 20% off your order. Just head to the link in the show notes and use the code ZONE2SPEAK at checkout. Protect your skin, fuel your adventures, and support the pod while you do it. Okay, on today's episode, I am joined by James Benson King, widely known as the Biking Viking, an endurance cyclist, motivational speaker, and content creator who redefined his boundaries on a bike. From a childhood shaped by a heart condition to carving out a career in high-pressure finance at JP Morgan, James ultimately answered a deeper calling. A fateful meeting with a cyclist tour during his bikepacking years sparked his dream, and he turned that dream into an extraordinary reality. Paddling from Alaska to Argentina over 32,000 across the Americas. Along the way, he battled snowstorms, survived riding 900 kilometers on one leg, and immersed himself into the wildest landscapes, growing into a powerful storyteller about resilience, problem-solving, and leadership. I had the chance to meet James at the VIA race where he finished 4,000 kilometers in the top 10, and I really enjoy our conversation there. So I'm so happy he made the time to come on the podcast and share his story with all of us. James, welcome to Zone to Speak.
Thank you for having me. How are you doing today?
Good. It's good to see you, to reunite, even though from afar.
No, it's definitely. I've been dealing with some post-race blues after VIA. It's horrible to meet all these amazing people, and then you just have to leave everybody, go back to normal life. So it's nice to catch up.
Yeah, I was thinking about that, because when you do those type of events, you are really immersed into your own thoughts and this experience, highs and lows, a little bit of solitude, and also meeting amazing people. And VIA is 4,000 kilometers, so it's longer than usual, and so it's a longer experience. So how is it back? How are you dealing with the blues?
It reminded me. I haven't felt anything this intense since I was when I was 16. I went on a rugby tour to South Africa, and when I was 18, I did another one to Australia with my school. So it was like 100 school kids. For 3 weeks, you would just be with each other 24/7. And at the end of it, you just came back and you were back with your parents and you'd had this massive bonding experience of playing sports in another country, amazing experiences. And then you're just back to being at home, normal life. And this was very similar to that, the adrenaline highs and the massive lows, compared with the community coming together at the start and the end, or me barging into a refuge and just bombarding you guys with my craziness, all of that, and then back to normal life. It's a big adjustment. Yeah. So I hope you come out of that positively, which I'm sure you will. And I know you have other bigger plans that I want to talk about it. But first, since we're talking about VIA, you finished on the top 10, an incredible result, such a tough event. What did that experience teach you, and how did it compare to your long solo expeditions? I think the biggest lesson I learned from VIA is confidence in myself. A lot of the events and challenges that I do are very solo, and it's me against me. And I think my self-confidence when I'm doing those challenges is kind of unlimited. I trust and back myself, but I never know how I compare to other riders. And I think this year has been my chance to do that more so, which is quite scary sometimes. You're really putting yourself out there. And VIA was the ultimate test for that. I'm editing the footage from the race now, and there's a lot of conversations I have with Ian along the way, kind of reminding me what I thought was achievable. I thought I would just be mid-pack, and he kind of convinced me to go for it and not leave anything on the table. And yeah, I was really, really happy to break the top 10 and end up finishing there. It was awesome.
Yeah, I remember we were having a little chat, you and I and Ian, and we talked about that, he thought maybe top 20, and then you made it to top 10. I mean, it's incredible.
Yeah.
Really
Yeah.
incredible.
I think the backup lesson of that I learned and that I'm kind of exploring more at the moment and potentially kind of writing a speech on is this idea that we have all these cliches in our life of like anything is possible if you believe it and like reach for the stars. And what I'm realizing this year is that although they are cliches, a lot of them are true. And that from this race, I learned if you don't aim for it, if you don't set these goals, then they aren't achievable because you don't know what you're aiming for and you haven't kind of breathed them into existence. And it's scary to do that. It's scary to say, I'm going to race 4,000 kilometers and I'm aiming to be in the top 10. Because if you don't reach it, it can seem quite silly. But if you don't have that goal, if you don't say, I'm going to do X, Y, Z, you're not aiming for anything. And I don't think it can be achieved that way. So that's kind of the sub lesson that I've learned is to set these crazy goals, which I do anyway.
Yeah, you do set a lot of crazy goals, but I agree, and this is something you can apply any facet of life, like studies, career, love life, whatever. Like if you don't set a goal, life is happening to you. And again, cliche, but it is the truth.
It's terrible. All the cliches are true, and
Yeah, yeah, it's true. Now, one of the moments that stood out at Via Race was the baguette story, which I think it was at the time was a super lowest moment, but now it's kind of turning out as a highlight.
it's definitely looking back at it, I think I started to soften on the view of that day the minute I got to the refuge. So my view had already started to become a bit positive, but in the moment, that was by far the lowest. Yeah, I mean that rain was the rain itself wasn't the problem. It was the freezing cold wind. I was soaked to the core, and that headwind was just was draining all through Germany. And I think the mentality of if you go out for a ride and it starts to rain, you might be 2 hours away from home, and once you get home, you can have a hot chocolate and warm up. But the mentality of being like it's 7 a.m. I'm freezing cold now. The rain doesn't look like it's going to stop, and 100 miles away is where I need to get to. Like the mindset to get through that was tough. Yeah.
Yeah, I can't even imagine because I was indoor waiting for you guys at Refuge too. And I'm like, oh, I cannot even complain about the weather because all the riders are out there. And for whoever is listening and don't know, at this, I think it was like actually a lot of days that was already raining and you couldn't, do the touch screen on your phone and there was nothing to wipe. Everything was soaked. So James was using pieces of a baguette to do the navigation on his phone and then do the touch
To
screen.
try my phone.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that was a bad decision on my part, which is I was beating myself up. I couldn't get the GPX from my phone to my Garmin. So I had to navigate off my phone. And that itself was an issue without the rain. And then the rain came along and that really, threw a spanner in the works. Yeah. A wet phone, you cannot open. And with everything soaked on the bike, there was only one option, and that's baguette.
Multi-purpose. And so,
a few people did ask if I still ate the baguette afterwards, and of course, as an ultra cyclist, like you don't throw calories away. So, yeah, I would squeegee my phone and then eat the baguette. That was the process.
Nice, classy.
Yeah. Leave shame at the door if you're an ultra cyclist. That's my advice.
Yeah. There's no shame on anything. Everything goes when you are in an ultra race.
Yeah.
So let me rewind a little bit from the very beginning. I did some research, so this is not something you shared, so correct me if I'm wrong. I saw that you grew up with a heart condition. How did that shape your mindset around challenge and endurance? And what point did you realize that physical pain and limitation weren't just obstacles, but fuel for growth?
I think the two were different aspects of my life which developed at different times. I think and this was all subconscious. I've only become aware of it, I would say, in the past 4 or 5 years, where I've looked back and been like, oh, maybe that's related to this. But I think that mindset of almost stubbornness, that subconsciously I probably thought this heart condition was limiting in my life, and therefore I had this drive from somewhere from like a young age. My first memory was of this being used was when I was 14, and my parents telling me, if you want to go to South Africa on this rugby tour, you need to pay for it because we don't have the money right now. And they said, we're not saying you can't go, like you have our permission to go, but if you want to go, you need to find £2,000. And so rather than having that as a no and just giving up and being a 14-year-old, I put absolutely everything, all of my energy into finding that money, making that money by hook or by crook. And I ended up going on that rugby tour. And I still had my heart condition then, so I was still dealing with that. So that's my first memory of it impacting my kind of drive. But in terms of the physical aspect, I was always involved in sports, rugby, American football. But I would say that I only really realized it affecting me in the physical sense was when I started cycling, and I realized that drive directly applied to my resilience in cycling. And I started doing endurance challenges. And that's when the two kind of really came together and really exploded into this whole other thing, which is now, my life's passion, I guess.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that. We talked a little bit about Via, how you built a successful path in investment banking, rising to operations VP at JP Morgan, while you secretly prepared your epic cycling journey. What internal shift happened that made you swap the corporate world for the unpredictability of long distance adventures?
I think part of it was, the honest answer was, I'd done 12 months of counseling because something didn't feel right. And what it came down to was I was having an internal identity crisis. I thought I should be doing something else, like deep down within me. And every moment that I spent staying in Bournemouth where I was living and going to work, I could feel myself not doing the thing I felt like I should be doing. And so that was kind of when I decided I need to change this, because I can keep on pushing in this other direction, but if deep down the core of me knows I should be doing something else, I think it's almost irresponsible not to chase that. And then the real kicker was I was really, really close to my granddad. I lived with him at the time, and he unfortunately passed away. And that was the final,
kick on the ass. The universe was telling you, you're free. Do it.
Yeah, you don't need to help him anymore. It was also a reminder of the fragility of life, and I was like, okay.
True.
So much to the dismay of my long-term girlfriend at the time, I did have to tell her I need to chase this dream. She was very understanding, and unfortunately, we're not together anymore. So, but yeah, it was the right decision. Right decision.
Yeah, when we had this chat, that was, I also related, and I hope a lot of people that are going through some of those feelings really listen to their gut. I know sometimes it's hard because we have commitments, but I think you can adjust things in life, because I went through that as well, and I'm making a quarter of what I used to make financially, but I'm much, much happier, much less stress in my life. I didn't make as a radical change as yours, but, I definitely took a step down, and I'm finding time and space to do things that I love, like the podcast and cycle more and creating events. So yeah, hopefully other people will listen to their gut, because I think a lot of people get sometimes a little stuck because it's hard, right? Sometimes to follow that internal voice.
It's really, really hard. And I think that's So I kind of deal in absolutes as well. So I'll swing the pendulum in one corner or another. But I think my message to other people is that they don't need to do that. A lot of people are having these internal issues, or they want to change something and they think it has to be massive. And it doesn't have to be massive. You can make smaller changes along the way. So I think for a lot of people, they think, well, I can't change this completely, so I just won't change anything. And the message I kind of try and give off is like, even small changes can make big, big differences. So you don't need to like see these massive adventures and think, well, that's what I'm going to do. You can make smaller changes along the way that can give the same benefits, I think.
Couldn't agree more. Just, making some room for you. And especially like speaking as a mom, I see so many moms too that it's just like there's so much time dedicated to kids and the house and the job, trying to juggle everything. But if you do squeeze in 1 hour for you a day, it does start to create some shift that in your mood and your perception of life and how you lead things are so much lighter and in your heart. Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah. So you left JP Morgan and you go into this journey from Alaska to Argentina. This was no small feat, 32,000 kilometers across diverse terrain, wildly diverse terrain. You set the rule that you would ride every kilometer by bike, never skipping or being driven. What was the significance of that self-imposed code, and how did it shape your experience along the way?
I think for me, the driver was that I was doing it for charity. So I wanted to raise money for Cardiac Risk in the Young, which is a charity that could have helped me. I wasn't aware of it when I was a kid, but it definitely struck a chord when I understood their purpose. So they screen children to try and find problems before they become bigger problems. And fortunately, my dad had the same heart condition as me. So when I complained of symptoms, I managed to catch them very early. And because of that, I found out about the charity through, unfortunately, a friend of mine passing away at university. And I really wanted to give back. I think there's potentially a sense of guilt there that I got through, and I don't know, maybe I could have helped Alex, but because of that, I wanted to raise money for Cardiac Risk in the Young. And for me, that meant cycling every kilometer, like just doing the journey itself. And I guess would be just the enjoyment. And so there needed to be some hardship in there. And I like to complete things. Like I like the idea of getting a car along the way just doesn't seem right. And so setting that gave me this overarching goal and unique purpose that I had to work towards. And I think that drove me along the whole trip. I saw a lot of other riders doing a similar trip to me whose goal was just enjoyment. They were out there to have fun, and kudos to them. They did the journey in their own way. But for me, I think the bigger goal was to push myself, and this kind of ingrained me in that purpose. How did it shape the challenge? There was a few times where it would have been a lot easier to just get in a car and drive along the way. Two spring to mind in particular. And so it forced me to problem solve. It forced me to be resilient. It forced me to see things as opportunities when maybe they didn't seem like opportunities at first glance.
Yeah, I bet. And there was a moment, I believe, in Baja California when your pedal crank failed and you rode nearly 900 kilometers using only your right leg. Did you use a Coke can to fix it? Did I read this right? Like, can you walk me through that and what was going through your mind physically, emotionally? And another question I have on this, sorry, it's loaded. How come you couldn't fix your bike for 900 kilometers?
So this all spans from me. So I like, as crazy as these challenges may sound, I am not the best at bike maintenance. As I said, my background is in contact sports, so I kind of went from the what do you say? The slogan is I went from smashing people to smashing pedals. So
okay.
I'm very rough. I'm very heavy-handed, and I noticed that my pedal crank was kind of wobbling a little bit, but I didn't do anything to tighten it for a day or two. And eventually, when I did go to tighten it, it had essentially ground down, and every time I went to put it back on, it would just fall off. So at the time I was 40 kilometers away from a big city. I was like, well, I need to cycle every kilometer. I'll hold onto the pedal and I'll just ride with one leg into this city. 40 kilometers, it was pretty tough, but I got in. I was like, problem solved. That's a story I can put in my piggy bank of stories to tell later. Now I can fix this problem. And I walked around this city for a day into every shop, and bicycle shops in the Mexican desert don't appear to be a big thing, especially in this city didn't even have one. But I
Wow.
managed to find some nuts and bolts that I could use to attach to the crank and really kind of tighten it down. And so what I did was I shifted a piece of like Coke can big enough to wrap around the crank and then wedge it on and tighten everything together. I thought I was an absolute genius. I clicked back into the pedal to set off the next morning, and I put a tiny bit of pressure through and the whole thing slipped off.
No.
And I was like, right, there's enough grip in it. I put it back on. There's enough grip in it for me to rest my foot on it, because otherwise you've just got your flailing left foot all
Yeah.
day. So I can rest my foot, but I have to put all the pressure through my right foot. And so the next day I rode 100 miles to the next city, one-legged. I got to the next city, was like, rub my hands together. I've got the story in the piggy bank. I did 100 miles with one leg today. Now I need to find a bike shop. And there was a bike shop in this city, but they did not have any parts for mine. We're talking kind of just town bikes they can fix. Odds and sods, they didn't have any pedal cranks that would work with my Shimano. And so at this point, I was like, I wanted to get down to Southern Baja for Christmas. So was trying to meet a friend there. And so I was like, well, if I've done 100 miles, I can just keep going, and I'll stop by bike shops along the way and see if they can help me. And otherwise I'll just keep going. And so part of it became, I knew that I wanted to be down there for Christmas. I didn't want to stop and wait for parts to be shipped to me and that faff. There was kind of nothing. It was the Mexican desert. There wasn't much going on in the towns I was passing through. And so for me, it's just better to keep moving than it is to stay still sometimes.
Yeah.
And so I wasn't sure along the way if I'd find the parts. I didn't. And I ended up riding all the way to Todos Santos, which was 900 kilometers. Arrived on Christmas Eve and arrived to the beach to meet my friends, and they were laughing at how big my right leg was compared to my left.
Oh my gosh. And you didn't have any pain from like the unbalance of riding? And yeah, you did.
But I had a lot of pain. There's a lot of back pain, it was soreness because you can't stand up out of the saddle ever. So it's one thing that you just kind of take for granted with two legs is getting out of the saddle is almost impossible. And then afterwards, when I ended up having the parts shipped to me. When I did put it back on, I kind of had to relearn how to ride a bike, because for 2 weeks I hadn't really ridden with two legs. So it was a whole lesson all over again.
Wow. Wow, that's intense. And kudos to you, because I think anyone else would I don't know, stopped, found a way. I don't know how, because I guess you're in the middle of nowhere, no bike shops that don't have the right parts. I don't know if they could order, but yeah, I mean, I certainly know. I don't know if I would do it with one leg. Man, that's a lot.
Some of it, I think, is just stubbornness. Yeah, I don't know whether it's resilience or I'm just really stubborn.
Well, on this same journey, you were exposed to volcanoes in Guatemala, snow, Alaska passes, but obviously there were also moments of pure human connection, like language lessons from locals, impromptu invitations to stay. Can you share one or two of those spontaneous encounters that you stayed with you most vividly?
I think the most vivid one would be in Mexico as well, mainly because at that point I didn't know the language that well, and I was very open to human connection. I think when I could speak the language more fluently, I was connecting more easily. But I really valued the connections I made in Mexico, as I was only just getting used to the language. And there was a particular instance up a volcano, actually, where a family, I'd hiked up to the top of a volcano, left my bike at this guard hut, and when I came back down, there was a family all crowded around my bike. And at first, the first moment, I was like, oh my God, is my bike okay? What are they doing? And as I went over, I could see that they were kind of in shock. They were just checking out my panniers. And we ended up talking, having a few pictures together. And they invited me to come and stay with them if I was passing through their town. And it was only when I checked my map a few days later that I realized I was going through their town. And so I emailed the guy, kind of said, hey, I'm going to be passing through, Hernando. And he said, you have to meet me this place at 4 p.m. on this day. And
Wow.
as a
Okay.
cycle
It's
tourer,
specific.
like, yeah. And as a cycle tourer, you're like, that's not how I live life. Like, I arrive into
Yeah.
places when I arrive, and like, it's freedom. And my immediate reaction was to be like, no, I'm not. But I softened a bit and I was like, yeah, okay, I'll meet you there. And as I arrived and realized that the location he'd sent me was the border to Oaxaca, which was his state, and he was super proud of his state. And as I sat there, it got to 4 o'clock, and I'm like, "Where? Like, you tell me to be here at 4, and you're not here at 4." It gets to 4:15, and I'm like, "What is going on?" And then up over the hill, I see one cyclist, and then I see like another cyclist, and another, and about 10 cyclists come up and all like get around me, and it's Hernando again and his family and his son and his friends, and they formed like a little bike club. And I'm like, okay,
Wow.
we can go ride now. And he's like, oh, 2 seconds. And he makes a call, and over the hill comes a police car. And they'd organized a police convoy. So they are mountain bikers normally. They go off and ride on trails and they don't trust the roads. So he'd called up his buddy to give us a police convoy in. So not only was it a car behind us to stop cars from overtaking, when we got to the city limits, they pulled a police motorbike in front so that we had a front and back convoy
Wow.
through the whole city. We were super
Wow. What
protected.
a VIP treatment.
Yeah, it was awesome. I had loads of pictures in the town center, and then we went and had dinner at their house, and it was just like the family was beautiful, the food was amazing. And that was when we sat down, and they implored me to come and speak at their school the next day.
Oh.
And I did. I butchered some Spanish initially. I did 2 to 3 minutes of my story in Spanish, and then thank God they asked me to just answer questions in English from the kids, which provided some incredibly funny questions from them. And that was my first kind of instance speaking in front of crowds. So that was I think it was 2,000 kids, maybe. It was a big school.
Wow.
And yeah, that I came away from that moment. I could tell that I'd inspired some of the kids to travel just through their own country, not even by bike, but I'd shown them some pictures of my journey through their country and made them see their own country in a different way. And I just loved that feeling of kind of inspiring, empowering other people. And yeah, I was riding off that for days. Yeah, that was awesome.
Wow. That was a catalyst for a lot of your purpose now. How amazing. Nothing is a coincidence. Here we go again. Another cliche.
There you go. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, if they hadn't been on that volcano on that day, like, who knows what I would be doing now. Yeah.
Well, I'm sure you would have found, people would want to hear a story and would have the same feeling, but how incredible to start with, this family and then with kids and having this funny moment of trying to speak Spanish and the kids are speaking in English. It sounds like a fun setting and, you were able to be on that high for a few days.
I was, yeah. And some of some of the kids, I mean, they were taking advantage of me as a non-Spanish speaker. One of the kids asked me what my shoe size was, and I didn't connect that there was maybe a connotation there with teenagers. So I'm truthfully
That's
saying
hilarious. Oh my gosh.
that moment plays rent free in my head that I answered that question seriously.
But maybe it was for the best.
Yeah.
That you were naively answering those questions.
Yeah.
How about your Spanish muscle? Are you flexing that still?
Oh man, I need to practice again. Every time I go and speak Spanish, I lose more and more confidence in myself. Yeah, I think once I get practicing again, it will be better. I just do not have the time at the moment, which is unfortunately very sad. I loved speaking Spanish.
Looking back, what were the biggest internal shifts you experienced? Hard-won lessons in adaptability, gratitude, mindset that continue to inform how you live and inspire others today?
I think the biggest one for me was, which impacts me kind of daily and in everything, is what I call kind of giving it up to the universe. And I just found this innate trust on that trip for reasons like the story I've just told you, that the universe kind of has a plan, and you can react when things happen in a negative way, but they've happened, and maybe they've happened for a reason. And so it just gives you this kind of comfort in that whatever happens, you've got it, and you can keep moving forward. And I think before, a big thing that worried me about coming home was, would I be able to get a job again, or would something work out? And in the end, it's just, if I'm working towards my Antarctica goal and I don't manage to raise the funds to go and do the trip, something else will work out. And if I have to go back to the corporate world because whatever doesn't work out, it is what it is. And so there's this just innate trust in the universe's plan, which kind of gives you a sense of calm and allows you to just kind of enjoy the smaller things without worrying too much. That's the overarching one. The other thing that I kind of figured out along the way, and is a story I kind of like to tell, is this thing, like I call it flipping the switch. And that's that I realized from Alaska to Argentina, there was never really a moment where I thought I wouldn't finish. And that was purely down to this, like, once I set my sights on something, like, the flip has been switched and it will happen. And it's just this distilled confidence that it will get done. And it's not cockiness, and it's not humble either. It's like somewhere in the middle of just almost
Trust.
Surgical. Yeah. And I think that's kind of when I'm going into these races or events, I get so dialed in that is the only thing that matters. The flip is switched, and so far they've all been successful. So those are kind of the two that I've come away with.
Very important messages, I think. And the first one, it's so easier said, like what you can control, you just need to let go. But it's true. Once if you start practicing, then becomes a habit. And it's true. Like, set your goals and just let go of what you can control. And we always figure things out, like, I guess, I don't know where I read this, but I think the most happier, successful, however for me, I'm defining success as happiness and tranquility and peace. It's people that are highly adaptable, because you just need to adapt to the circumstances. If you keep on holding on to a result or how things should be or something from the past, then those things are controlling you. And if you let go, I think, like you said, it's just what's meant to be will be.
Exactly. And I think the other thing is sometimes you need to allow yourself to not be that as well. So as an example, last night, I fell off the bike in Via race. I think I fractured my rib. Last night I was doing squats and I fully broke my rib. Like I braced my core and was like screaming in agony.
Wow.
And immediately it wasn't the pain that was annoying me. It was the fact that I know that I now can't train in a gym probably for 4 to 6 weeks. And I know that I can deal with that and find a way around that. But the immediate 2 to 4 hours after that happened, I was miserable because I was like, I can't do what I want to do. And sometimes you have to give yourself the space to just be a kid and act. You can sulk.
Yeah.
You can sulk for 2 to 4 hours.
Yeah.
And then you can wake up the next day and be like, right, this is what we're going to do to move forward. And so sometimes it's just understanding your reaction, understanding what you need from other people. Like my parents were trying to help me, and I was like, I don't need your help. I just need to sulk for a couple hours. Let me wallow in self-pity, and then I can figure this thing out. And I think it's understanding yourself as well. So I'm not saying I'm perfect. I'm not saying that my immediate reaction when something happens is, the universe has got my back. Sometimes that isn't the reaction. But eventually knowing you'll get around to that and be able to like give up the control aspects is part of it as well.
Yeah, very good point. Yeah, you need to name the feelings. It's okay to feel the feelings. Just don't stay there forever. And also, it doesn't mean that just because the wind is blowing one way that you can just be like, oh, this is what the universe wants. No, you still can fight for what you want, but just don't get stuck there. Yeah, well said.
Yeah.
Well said. You clearly mentioned about your next challenge. So I know you're plotting an even bigger challenge, becoming the first person to cycle across Antarctica by 2026. What draws you to that, and how are you preparing mentally, physically, and logistically for this new frontier?
The why, I think, is partly answered by circumstance. So at the end of my Alaska to Argentina trip, I managed to get a really good deal to a tour to Antarctica. So it was a treat to myself to go on this cruise, and it was my final continent. I'd then done North America, South America, and Alaska, and I'd visited 7 out of 7 continents. But it just so happened that I'd only finished my trip 2 days ago, and there was a big void in in, let's say, my next goal. And at the same time, I was reading about cycling in Antarctica, and there's a guy called Omar De Felice, an Italian endurance cyclist who had attempted to cycle across Antarctica. And as I was reading about him and seeing the continent myself, this idea of trying it came into my mind. Initially, I kind of, batted it away. I was like, no, that's too crazy. You don't want to do that. But eventually it stuck, and I was like, this is going to be my next thing. As with all my crazy goals, like, kind of say I'm going to do something, and then I figure everything else out afterwards. So when I said I was going to do this, I'd never cycled in snow. I'd never really been in cold weather camping or anything, and so I'm figuring all of that stuff out as I go along. And so I went to Sweden this year, did 2 months roughly in cold weather, and got used to camping out in the cold and cycling through snow and things. But I'd say logistically, the biggest challenge is the fundraising aspect. And so that's what I'm going through at the moment. Is it's quite expensive to go and do these challenges. And so I'm learning this whole new skill of kind of pitching myself to brands and pitching what I think my value is and what I can bring to them. And so that's the process I'm going through at the moment. I've just realized I haven't said what the challenge itself actually is. So my goal is to become the first person to cycle across Antarctica. And so that would be from the edge of the landmass to the South Pole, and then to another edge of landmass. So it's the shortest crossing. It's about 1,600 kilometers, but it would take about 70 to 80 days probably to do.
Depending on the weather.
Depending on the weather, you can roughly do, the fastest times are kind of 15 to 20 kilometers a day. And that's kind of including skis. Like skis, that's roughly what a ski tourer does. So cycling is harder than that. And I'm predicting half the time this is the biggest part of the mental aspect of the challenge, is that for half of the challenge, I won't even be able to ride the bike, and I'll be pulling the pulk, which is the sled behind me, and pushing the bike. That's what I'm projecting, and that's what I'm working towards.
Wow. And I'm sorry if it's a stupid question, but I'm thinking it's completely deserted, right? Like, what do you do for food and things like that?
Well, there's nothing. Yeah, it is a white desert. So
yeah.
That's a big part of the mental preparation as well, is how I'm dealing with that. You saw me at Via Race. I get all of my energy from other people. There's going to be no refuges there for me to recharge at. And so to seriously answer your question, all of the food will be carried in my pulk if I decide to go unsupported. My hope is that I can raise enough money to pay for food stores along the way, and have that support, which will make the challenge, like the success rate of the challenge, much higher. And so I'd probably have 5 or 6 food stashes along the way, which would mean that the pulk would be dramatically reduced in weight. Yeah.
Well, I hope you get that. Is there link, or how can people contribute to this? Are you fundraising as well, that people can contribute to help you achieve this goal?
It's something that I'm looking at. So at the moment, I'm pulling together all of the final kind of the project website and things like this. And as a side part of that, I think a few people have reached out and said they'd love to help. And so I'll set up a fundraiser as well. Yeah.
Awesome. We'll add to the episode description so everybody can check it out, read more about it, and contribute.
Awesome. Thank you.
Well, such a pleasure always spending time with you. Thanks for sharing your journey. You are a true inspiration. And as you gear up for the icy, wild I'll be watching and rooting every step of the way.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Pleasure to talk to you.
And that's all for today's episode. I want to thank the listeners for tuning in. Your support means everything. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider following, leaving a review, and sharing it with your friends.